We'll probably get started now. My name is Michael Kerner with Kerner Camera. Welcome to the Virtual Lens Summit. This week, we're honored to have Cooke Optics on board. This is about our 9th or 10th Lens Summit we've done since this COVID situation has started. And everybody's looking forward to getting back to work. I'm going to hand it over to Les Zellin. This is being live streamed on Facebook on both the Cooke Optics channel as well as the Kerner Camera channel. And Les Zellin is the chairman of Cooke Optics. And take it away, Les.
Thank you, Michael. I want to thank you for putting this together under the circumstances. I hope everybody is safe and well, and I hope we can all get back to work soon. And I haven't been on the ground in one place this long for my entire working career. So this is I'm sort of going through travel withdrawal. So kind of strange. But anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to introduce all the Cooke people that are here. So I don't know what order the pictures are on your screens, but Christine Brennick, why don't you raise your hand, Chris? Chris is their head of sales, she works out of the office and she takes care of almost everybody and everything. Does a great job for us. Eric Johnson, you can wave, Eric. You can wave, Eric. There you go. Wow. Eric is our traveling sales guy in the US and North and South America. He has put together quite a few bit of information for this show. And then we have Michael Natus. Michael is our West Coast sales guy located just north of LA. We're missing Ricardo today. Ricardo is our New Jersey sales guy, works at our main office in New Jersey. Then we have Daniel. Wave, Daniel. Daniel is runs our office out of São Paulo for service and sales support. And we have Thomas Greiser. Thomas has got no good reason to be here, but he is our he covers Asia for us, Australasia and parts of Africa, and has been a key member of the Cooke team for quite a while, working in all of our territories around the world at one time or another. And then lastly, we have, you can see her smiling picture, which is Kathy Crawley, who is our social media, PR, marketing dynamo.
I can turn my mic on and interrupt whenever I like.
Okay.
Out again. Out again.
There, and she will, I'm sure. We are going to give you a bunch of information about Cooke with history going up to the current day. I see some of our competitors are here, so we won't give you too much, but look, hopefully just enough. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Eric. Right, Eric?
Thank you very much, Les. I hope everyone can hear me okay. I'll try to speak slowly and clearly, which is a problem I sometimes have. So we will go ahead and share the screen. And through the magic of Zoom, this should work. All right, is everyone seeing this?
Not yet.
It'll be there.
There we go.
All right, so we have entitled this The History, Art, and Science of Cinematography. Doesn't that sound like the best presentation you're going to get on a Friday afternoon? And again, we thank Michael Kerner for having us here, and thank you to the team from Cooke for being here, and thank you to all of the participants for spending your time today with us. We very much appreciate that. So why are we here? This is a question I've been starting with recently, and it's getting better. We're here to tell a story. And when you think about it, that's really what each of us do every day. Any production that we are associated with or involved with or helping or creating equipment for, Their ultimate goal, whether it's a newscast, a television show, or a major $200 million feature film, at the end of the day, their goal is to simply tell a story. And Cooke is here to help you tell your very best story. And after 130 plus years of uninterrupted time that we have been here, we have a lot of story to tell. And that's why we brought in all the heavy hitters from Cooke today to help us tell that story. So with no further delay, I will bring Mr. Zelen in, the chairman of Cooke Optics, to start with the history of Cooke, who he can do a much better job of explaining this than I can. So let's take it away.
I will tell you, Eric, we've gotten a lot of comments already that your audio is terrible. So just to let you know, we may just chop your report. We may just let you do the slides. I think you planned that. Anyway, Cooke, as Eric just said, goes back over 130 years. Our parent company, Taylor Hobson, not yet. Our parent company, Taylor Hobson, is in 1886, and then the first Cooke lenses appeared in the early 1890s. There's some debate about when they actually appeared, but about 1893 is a pretty good date. We've been making movies since the very early days. We were associated with Edison and George Eastman. Our lenses were used on the Shackleton expedition. If you know the history of that down to Antarctica, it's quite exciting and interesting. Obviously, more recently, Game of Thrones, Stars Born, 0.30. The list goes on and on. Now, notice the golf ball, by the way. If you in the background of the screen, one of the things that really fascinates me about the engineers of the late 1800s and 1900 in the early 1900s is how clever they were by today's standards, just no tools at all. Basically, their intellect and their intellect in a slide rule, basically. So it's always been amazing to me. And one of the things that one of the stories that came from Cooke is that William Taylor, one of our founders, in about 1905, I think it was told he was working way too hard, and he should take up a hobby. And of all the silly hobbies he took up golf. I'm not sure that one is really that stress-free, but he did. And he noticed what a lot of others noticed at the time, and that is the dimpled golf ball. No, excuse me. Golf balls at the time were not dimpled. They were just round and smooth like ping pong balls. He noticed what a lot of other people undoubtedly noticed, and that is that the balls that were, bent and cut and deformed slightly went further than a brand new ball. And he went home and he thought about that, and he invented the dimpled golf ball. So again, these are just really clever engineers. I'm not so sure, really not as sure that we're as clever today as we think, as we let our tools do so much of the work for us, where they really had to think it through. Anyway, Eric, you want to go to the next slide? Okay, so this is Thomas Edison on the right, George Eastman on the left. 90 and George Eastman said 90% of the 16mm film used in film was used in America, passed behind the lenses of men made in Leicester. Our company's been in Leicester, England for the entire length of its history. We're still located there. And so, as I said, our history in the film industry goes right back to the beginning. Next, please. So in the early days, we made lenses. We had the Cynic lens in about 1905. Our lenses were used by all the silent stars, Chaplin, Mary Pickford all made movies with our lenses. The first Academy Award-winning film called Wings was shot with our lenses. And if you're up on the history, the famous Blair's Mansky used had like 100 sets of lenses that they used to film just about everything. Where the metal hit the road, or the rubber hits the road, is in the early 20s when sound comes in. Sound comes in, and the industry really needed faster lenses. You can imagine, I don't know how much of the history you know, but pre-sound, they could light a set with anything. That's daylight. I used to live very close to Edison's studio, where he had what's called the Black Maria, which was a big turntable and a mirror mechanism that would follow the sun across the sky, a big black box. It must have been 1,000,000 degrees in there in a hot New Jersey summer. So they shot a lot of movies in there. All of a sudden, sound comes in, and the state of lighting, the state of lighting at the time, as I said, was pretty primitive for incandescent. But the other thing they would use in lighting silent movies would be what's called a carbon arc. Most of you are probably too young to know about carbon arcs, but it's basically an anode and a cathode, and you jump electricity across it. It makes a lot of light, but it's also very dirty and also very noisy. So all of a sudden sound comes in, it's not really that useful. I want to stop for just a second to say, as we're going through this, we cover a lot of material by various people. If you have questions, I don't exactly know how you raise your hand, but I'm sure Michael Kerner or Kathy will field questions and pass them along. So don't wait to the end, you can ask them as we go. Anyway, in the early 20s, sound comes in, requires really fast lenses, and we answered the call with the speed Pancros. We had actually designed these, that they were called Series 0. We were never too good with naming things. And the Series 0 is made actually for still. And they were relatively fast, f2. And they were relatively fast, but nobody in the still world really, they were not a very good seller in the still world. People didn't understand why they needed a little faster speed. They'd use a little longer exposure or some more flash powder or whatever. They didn't really think they needed the faster lenses for a few more dollars or pounds. But the movie industry, they were desperate for them. So we reformulated the Series 0 quite a bit and brought them out as the Speed Pancros. And we have letters in the files, from studio heads saying, these lenses made early talking movies possible. And as you all know, these lenses are still used today, either in a rehoused form or in our newer version of them called Pancro Classics. They are quite exciting. They offer, especially in the digital realm, a way to sort of take the edge off the digitalness of things. And of course, we noticed that straight away when digital came out with the red one originally about 10 years ago now. For almost the first thing people did was run for the old lenses to make it look more cinematic. So, and with the Speed Pancros, of course, there's a finite number of them. A lot of them are in disrepair. The last Speed Pancro we actually manufactured was in 1965. So we haven't made those lenses for 55, 56 years. And I take great pride in the fact that they're still desired and in use today. Okay, Eric. In the 1930s, this is just to go back to explain how clever the people were and what a role that Cooke played in the history of the cinema business, of the film business. In the 1930s, Technicolor developed a 3-strip process, basically for making color film using black and white film. If you can imagine a more current, but yet still out of date comparison would be a 3-chip video camera with a red channel, a blue channel, and a green channel. Before the single chip chips, before chips, there were tubes. In any case, that's the same sort of concept. The light would come through the lens and then go through beam splitters and expose, and then through a filter, a red, green, or blue filter, and expose 3 strips of black and white film that were later conformed, well, that were dyed and then conformed to make color. So the trouble was, at the time, nobody could figure out how to throw the light. Usually when the light came into the lens, the film was, as it is today, 52 millimeters behind the flange. And it was always plus or minus pretty close. Now, somebody had to figure out how to throw the light in all the various focal lengths that were required, not just an inch or two, but maybe a foot or so, because it had to go through beam splitters and mirrors and prisms, filters, and to get to the 3 strips of black and white film. So that was a very difficult optical problem. And the guys at Technicolor, the engineers at Technicolor, sent a contingent of people over to Cooke in England, explained their problem, and Cooke solved the problem and invented what was called a inverse telephoto, which is something we still use today. And virtually every, obviously every manufacturer uses it, and it solves a host of problems. And so we were very pleased that we were the ones that developed it. A little bit more history before we move on, and that is, where does the name Cooke come from? Because our parent company was called Taylor Hobson. And it was Taylor Hobson, it was Taylor and Hobson. It was Taylor and Taylor first, then Taylor and Hobson. And then after World War I, between World War I and World War II, it was partially owned by Bell and Howell in Chicago, out of Chicago. And then after World War II, it was owned by the Rank organization, pretty much up until the time I came along and took it over in 1998. The Cooke name is interesting in that there was another person in this story, and his name was Dennis Taylor, and he's not related to the Taylor brothers that started Taylor and Taylor. He worked for a telescope company up in York, England, and he invented a arrangement of glass that is now called the Cooke triplet. And the real key to the Cooke triplet is, if you look at photographs from the 1880s, 1890s, you'll know that they all have they all vignette around the sides. The only way for them to have sharp focus all the way to the corner was to actually shoot through a pinhole. The Cooke triplet allowed lenses to be wide open, and get detail all the way to the edge. And this is considered by a lot of optical historians to be one of the most important inventions or discoveries, however you want to look at it, in modern photography. It ushered in a whole host of lenses and lens techniques. Again, we all use them today. Anyway, T. Cooke and Sons, that made telescopes, had no use for this invention. And they contacted their friends down in Leicester and said, hey, you want to use this in your photographic lenses? And of course, we said yes. And the deal was made that any lens that we made using the Cooke triplet would be called a Cooke lens. Over time, because Taylor Hobson had many different brands at different market points price points in the market. Over time, Cooke simply became the premier name that they used on their high quality lenses, and all the other things sort of fell away over time. And when I took over the company, we renamed it from Rank Precision Industries, which was the name at the time, to Cooke Optics. So here's a brief history. Thank you, Eric, for listening. Starting with the 1880s, the company was formed. The 1890s, it was Dennis Taylor's patent that we had. In the 1910s, of actually the whole years of the First World War were taken up by the Shackleton expedition. Again, a fascinating story. If you don't know anything about it, I really urge you to Google it, find out. It was really fascinating. The original Cinic lenses, and then in the 20s, the speed Panchros evolved from the Series 0. In the 1930s, we did not invent the zoom lens, but that big boxy thing next to where it says Technicolor, to the left of the name Technicolor, is not a Technicolor lens. That was the first production zoom lens. It's made in the 30s. I own one. It weighs about 30 pounds all by itself. It's a monster lens. And it was originally used, I believe, in King George's coronation. And of course, the Technicolor lenses that we talked about. We have the Technicolor era up till the end of the Bell and Howell era up till the end of World War II, and continuing to make speed Panchros, 50 more speed Panchros, in the 60s, even more speed Panchros. Eric?
Hey, Les, I have a quick question for you. Do you mind telling a little bit more of the recent history of Cooke and how you?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Oh, okay, I didn't know if you're gonna.
We just arrived.
Okay.
We just arrived.
Just how the deal went down and all that's just fascinating.
Yeah, with great difficulty. That's why I don't wear pants. I can't afford them anymore. So anyway, in the 70s, the company was very involved. The company was very involved in early days of TV. That is, the Taylor Hobson side of it was very involved in TV, and they developed some of the very first lenses for TV. And in fact, if you see an antique early 50s, late 40s video camera, you may well see an RTH zoom lens on it. So in the late 60s, they decided to get out of the prime business and start making zoom lenses, not only for TV, but also for cinema. So we had the 20-100, which evolved into the 18-100, as well as the 25-250, which had three Mark I, Mark II, and Mark III versions of the 25-250. And many of these lenses are still used today. So once again, just like the speed Panchros, I'm pretty impressed and proud that our lenses have stood the test of time. And then we get to the 90s. Well, actually, let's stay in the 80s first. And a couple of things happened in the 80s. And one of them that's not on this flow chart is that Panavision introduced the Primo primes. And up until then, the non-Panavision world really thought they had Panavision on the ropes. I had meetings with several of the big rental houses at the time out in LA, and they thought, gee, everybody's starting to understand with the new Arri cameras, and everybody understanding that Panavision doesn't really make their own glass, but their glass is really rehoused Cooke and Angenieux and Zeiss and Tamron and Nikon and you name it. Why pay more when you can get the same equipment and a great camera from the new cameras from Arri? So there was this sort of migration away from Panavision. The guys at Panavision noticed that and never remember the guy's name that was running Panavision at the time. Doesn't matter. But really nice guy, but very smart. He started the Primo project. The Primos came out in the late 80s, and all of a sudden, all that movement toward non-Panavision cameras started to wash back toward Panavision. They were really they were the first modern prime lenses, and they were a system, and it was brilliant. And of course, Panavision at the time was by far the best marketing company in the industry, bar none. So they really started to pull business back. So the major rental houses at the time and the minor rental houses at the time that weren't Panavision went shopping. And they went to everybody. They said, please, please, please do a new set of lenses, a new modern set of prime lenses for the industry. And when I say they went shopping, they went to Zeiss, they went to Arri, they went to Cooke, they went to Angenieux, they went to Fujinon, they went to Canon, they went to Tamron, they went to, you can just fill in the name. They traveled the world and they went everywhere saying, please do this. I think, and this is conjecture, but I think Arri Zeiss, because Arri and Zeiss at the time were working closely together. I think they got turned down because it was a new project, and their Distigons and super speeds were still selling, and they were like 20, 30-year-old designs. So why upset a good thing? And none of the other people, none of the other companies they approached, and we're now in the early 90s, said yes. Cooke said yes. And at this time, I was from about 1981 up through this time, up to 1998, I was simply the US agent. And Cooke said yes for all the wrong reasons. The managing director of Cooke at the time thought he could do a set of lenses in, I don't know, 6 months to a year. And he knew that the rank organization that owned Cooke at the time, or owned Taylor Hobson at the time, and I don't know, I should digress just quickly. Rank at the time was a very big company. If you're European, you know, when you were growing up, it wasn't called a Xerox machine, it was called a Rank Xerox. Xerox, they made a deal with Rank. Early on, Rank owned the rights to it all over the world except in the US. And they put a lot of money into Xerox. So Rank was a very big conglomerate. But over time, I should tell you one more interesting fact. So have you all seen, I know you can't raise your hand, so I'll imagine you are raising your hand, the old black and white movies where there's this greasy gong guy and he hits the gong at the beginning of the movie, and it's the J. Arthur Rank company. This was the Rank organization. J. Arthur Rank was a baker in England in the early part of the last century. He made a ton of money baking bread, and he loved the movies, and he built the movie industry in England. He built Pinewood, he built the Rank Laboratories, he built Shepperton. He built the whole infrastructure in the UK. I can't remember his date of death, but he had died, and the board of Rank over time decided they wanted to get out of manufacturing and movies in general and get into leisure. And they started investing in things like Hard Rock cafes and so forth. So by the time we get to the 90s, they were well on their way to divesting all their manufacturing companies and not making investment. So at Cooke had actually fallen on pretty hard times about now. Angenieux had come out with their original 25 to 250 that competed with our Mark II. That was an HP, which is not really good. But when they came out with the HR series, that was a very good set of lens. That was a very good lens, and started to give us a run for their money. They kept innovating, and because Rank wasn't making investment, we fell behind in the zoom world. So we were on pretty hard times for most of the 90s. Anyway, the then MD in the early 90s goes out to LA, sits down with some of the rental houses. He hears their plea, and he says, okay, we'll do it. Everybody in the industry thinks that the two major rental houses at the time put up hundreds of thousands of dollars. It isn't true. The deposit from each of them was $10,000. So, not even back then in the early 90s, that was not that significant an amount for the kind of project we're talking here. But the MD thought he could get the lenses designed within the year, and then he could go down to his master's in London and say, look, boys, I know I didn't get permission for this project, but I'm a hero, and we've got orders, stretching for days. Well, that year turned into 2 years, turned into 3 years, turned into 4 years. And about in 1996, Rank did put their manufacturing businesses up for sale under the umbrella of Rank Precision Industries. And with that, Cooke, which was a very small, insignificant division, because at the time we had 36 employees and a turnover of less than £1 million. And that's, that's before we count cost of goods and all that. So really not making any money whatsoever. But we were hidden inside of a bigger company so they could hide it. So they sell Rank Precision Industries, and immediately somebody raises their hand and says, on the first day the new owners come in and says, what are you going to do with Cooke? And much to everybody's surprise, they didn't even know they bought Cooke. This was like an £85 million deal in the mid 90s, which back then is, well, even today, that's real money. But we were so insignificant, Cooke, they didn't even know it. They dug it and found it, and they were told by their corporate masters, because they were private equity people, to basically either shutter it, which means put it out of business, sell it for £1, give it away, just to get rid of it. It was a money-losing proposition. Fortunately, between the then sales manager for Cooke, a guy named Brian Newman, he hit it off with the financial director of the new company, a guy named Robert Howard, and convinced Robert that it had a lot of value. It just was not being, it just wasn't being appreciated or used correctly. And Robert Howard put it up for sale, and and actually sold it to somebody else. In about in 96, he actually sold it to somebody else. And I was very unhappy because that somebody else would have put me out of business, basically. That deal never happened. It dragged on for a year, and then at the end of 97, at the end of 96, they made the deal. At the end of 97, that deal just never happened. It fell through. And I went over to Robert and said, I'm next. And he said, okay. And over the next 6 months, from December of 97 till July of 98, we put a deal together. I found the money, which is even a more incredible story because I had no money. But somehow I managed to find it. And I took over Cooke in July of 98. The work on the S4s had continued, albeit at a very slow pace. When I took over, I think we had 2 or 3 of the original 4 lenses. And as they say, the rest is history. The S4s hit the market in a remarkable way. As I said, we only had 3 or 4 to start with. A good month for us back then was, because we had 36 people, if you remember, and spread around manufacturing and assembly and admin. So if we could make 12 to 16 lenses a month, that was a pretty good month in 98. But we had several things going for us at the time. One is the speed Panchros continued to be really popular. And we had, and everybody knew we hadn't made them back, and now we're talking for 30 years at the time, or almost 35 years. So, but they were very beloved lenses. So when we come out with a new set, with all that time in between, there's sort of a magical thing that happens, that it's not just a new set, it's seen as really a leap in the industry, especially coming on the, behind the Primos, which had taken the Panavision world by storm. Here was at last a modern solution for the non-Panavision world. All of our competitors at the time, who I know knew we were working on this, I think didn't believe we would survive the sale and all the turmoil at Taylor Hobson. So they kept, I don't think they ever thought the S4s would see the light of day. So when I took over, we surprised them big time. And that's when, Zeiss and Aries started the Primo project. That was their reaction to it. And that took them 2 or 3, as I remember, about 3 years to go from, oh my God, we better do something, to getting the set of lenses out. In that time, I and the Merry Band at Cooke were able to expand our original 3 or 4 lenses to probably 10 or 12 lenses by then, on the road to going to 18 lenses that we now have in the S4 line. Get our manufacturing ability up, so we weren't backordered for years and years, but only a year or 2, and get a real foothold in the market and get established with our product, as well as getting established financially. That'll let us keep going. Of all my major competitors in the film world, up to where digital came in, basically Zeiss and Angenu, we are the small guys. We're not a billion-dollar company as Zeiss is or Angenu. So we have some advantages being a small company. We can make decisions quickly, but because we're small, we're at the time, at least, we were extremely resource limited on R&D. So while we could make decisions quickly, we couldn't necessarily execute them as quickly as we would have liked. And my philosophy has always been to keep moving and make things as fast and as good and as we can that the industry wants. And I think we've shown that over time. So we started with the S4s that have now expanded to 18 lenses in the set. In 2004, we took a stab at getting back into zoom lenses with the CXX, which are 15 to 40 T2 lens. As I tell people, it's a great lens, but I don't recommend anybody, if you can find one and use it, it's a great lens. I don't recommend anybody buy it because it's really an orphan. The guys at Angenu have done a great job in zooms, and and have really cornered that market at the moment, although they're getting a little heat now from Fujinon and others. Then we introduced the 5-eyes in 2010. They're basically fast S4s. They were T14. The mini S4s came right on the heels of that. They're basically, they were originally called, I originally tried to revive the name Pancro. So if you see an old set of these, they may have the name Pancro on them. That was a real mistake on my part. Originally they were called Pancro because I thought the name was terrific. But people that were looking for the old speed Pancros got really disappointed because these lenses look like S4s and not speed Pancros. And people that didn't like the speed Pancros wouldn't even look at them, thinking, oh, these are going to look like those old Cooke lenses. So we almost immediately renamed them Mini S4, and then they've done very well there. What makes them Mini is they're physically smaller, but they're also a stop slower. They're a T28. Interestingly enough, when Jeff Boyle does all his blind taste tests up on CML, almost invariably the pictures that win his blind taste test are Mini S4 shots. Which I find interesting. And then you hear all the people say, oh, no, I didn't vote for those. Well, a majority of people did. I guess a plurality of people did. And they are great lenses. So if speed is not an issue, and frankly, I don't know why it would be with all the new video cameras out there, or excuse me, digital cameras out there. Mini S4s are a great answer. Anyway, and then when digital came in, 9 or 10 years ago, as I said earlier, we saw everybody lust after new tools, which were the old lenses, speed panchros, Boltars, just about anything that would, take the digitalness out of the pictures. And it was really, it was interesting to watch. And immediately I pulled the trigger on our anamorphic project. Now, we had been asked to do anamorphics from the day I bought the company. But when we went through the financial side of it with our customers, that, we weren't interested, they were interested in not doing a movie Hawk might get. They were interested in doing something that Panavision would get. So talking the big stuff. And to do that, you're not talking about one set of lenses for one production, you could be talking 3, 4, 5, 6 sets of lenses, maybe even more. So when you started to go through that math with our customers, they would just sort of get up and leave the table thinking the cost of entry to compete with Panavision was just too great. Digital, as I said, changed all that. People really started to lust after anything that would help them bring character and personality to digital. I like to think, what I say when I do a lecture all over the place is that digital is a great medium, but it really lacks character and personality and things that film had sort of intrinsically. And there were also a lot of tricks you would play with film. You had a dozen different stocks, so you had the different emulsions, you had all kinds of tricks they could do with the lab. So there was all these things were sort of built into the film world, which were not in the digital realm. So all of a sudden, as a company, anamorphics made a lot more sense for us to do. And so we immediately dived into start doing our anamorphics, which we introduced in 2013. And our approach to anamorphic was to be a traditional anamorphic. Some companies have chosen to do a really clean anamorphic, and there's a place for everybody, so that's great. But my feeling is that you want to do a clean anamorphic where things are rectilinear and you get the coverage, but not the character of anamorphic, which is the what I call the funkiness of anamorphic, the pokey, you've got 2 depths of field working because you've got a horizontal lens and you've got basically 2 lenses squeezed into one. You've got a horizontal, in this case, in this picture, it's a 50. So we have a vertical 50 millimeter and a horizontal 25 millimeter that we squeeze. So that means we have 2 different depths of field that are working. We've got the distortion that anamorphic brings in. Now these things, some people have managed to eliminate, great. But my feeling is if you eliminate them, shoot spherical. It's cheaper, it's faster, it's easier. And the only reason to shoot anamorphic is that in my mind at least, is that you want the anamorphic character. Again, to help bring digital to life. So we introduced in 2013 the primes, the anamorphic eye primes. In a year or two later, we introduced the anamorphic zooms, of which we've only delivered one of them so far at 35 to 140. And we did this originally. We were talking with our friends at Angenu about doing, front anamorphic zooms. They chose to do rear anamorphic zooms, and there's a substantial difference. To get the anamorphic character that we're looking for in our lenses, you have to do your anamorphic work in front of the iris. It's the only way it works. If you do it in the back of the iris, yes, it makes the lens, it's easier. It is the cylinders that we use to squeeze are smaller and lighter. It makes the lens a lot simpler to build, but it doesn't give you what I was looking for, and that's the anamorphic character. The only way to get that is to do your squeezing in front of the iris. It can be in the very front, or in our case, in the middle, but in any case, you have to do it in front of the iris. So when they didn't go that route, we started coming out with our own anamorphic zoom. We still have another one to go, which has been sort of a thorn in our side, but we'll get it done sooner or later. And then we get to large, we'll continue in Super 35. So going back to what I said, a long time ago, the speed panchros, still popular throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000s with the advent of digital. I know a lot of people that were throwing away or giving away their old speed panchros, and when digital came out and the price of the old lenses skyrocketed, they could have just cried because they threw away what they thought was worthless or worth $100, all of a sudden was worth 10 grand. So, but as I said, the amount of speed panchros out there it's a finite supply because we haven't made them in 35 years. And also a lot of them are in disrepair. We don't have spare parts anymore. They've yellowed. A lot of people think the yellowing is the glue. It's actually the glass. Back in those days in the 50s, one of the elements that everybody used, not just us, but everybody used in glass was an element called thorium. Thorium is slightly radioactive, and not enough to cause you any harm when it's in the glass. But if you rework the glass, if you rework that old glass and you breathe in the dust, that's not a good thing. Anyway, but there is a finite supply. Color of them are all over the place. The state of repair was also all over the place. So we took out those old panchro designs and we redesigned them into what's become called the Panchro Eye Classics. And they have been extremely popular. The main difference between a modern Cooke lenses, everything we built S4 and forward, with the exception of the Panchro Classics, is the way the fall off works. In an S4, the old speed panchros and the Panchro Classics, the fall off starts right as you come off axis. So as soon as you're 2 or 3 pixels in any direction, a gentle fall off focus kicks in. On all the other modern Cooke lenses, we've cleaned up what we call the picture height area, which is if you take a vertical line through the axis on a frame and you spin it around and make a circle, that's the picture height area. That area on a Cooke lens is pretty clean. And then beyond that, we let the fall off come in, and it's a nice gradual fall off to the edges. And we do this because that's the way you see things. You know, if you're looking at me or you're looking at anything, you know, what's right on axis is in focus, and as you get around the peripheral, things get soft and blurry. So we try to give the cinematographer a tool that sees the way they want to see, and helps them tell the story. So that's the Panchro classics, and they've been very popular. They've been very popular for the same reason the Panchro speed Panchros are popular. We originally started with a set of, I can't remember, 6 or 8, and we mimicked both the speed and focal lengths of the old speed Panchros. So we had a 152, which was the 6-inch lens. And then over time, they've been so popular, we've added modern focal lengths, 21, 27, 135. We added a 65 macro. That's been extreme. All these lenses have done really well. And now we move into the modern era of full frame. And with that comes the S7s. The S7s, I believe, well, maybe not the first, the S7s were out and available before the cameras were available, which doesn't usually happen in the industry. Usually it's the lens guys following the camera guys. But in this case, we just believed all the rumors we heard, and we followed, and we got out ahead of them. And the S7s were the answer to that. They're T2, and again, very popular, making lots of movies with them. Eric, is there another slide here? No? Go back. Okay, so I guess we need to add another slide here, because now we have the anamorphic full frame plus lenses that we introduced about a year ago. And these lenses took a slightly different philosophy. The original anamorphics for Super 35 were 2x, meaning a 2x squeeze.
Les, we have this in the presentation in a little while when we get to the modern lenses individually.
Well, then I'll stop with that, just saying that when we get to it, I'll come back and talk about why we changed the squeeze ratio for the full frame lenses. And I guess we can go, unless there are any questions. I don't see any hands up. Okay.
There was a question earlier about cleaning lenses in the pandemic time that I think
when Michael Natus is talking, he's our service guy. He'll address that. We have a document on that. I'll let him answer that.
Okay.
I think he's up pretty soon. Well, Eric, where'd you go? Did Eric drop off? Eric? Okay. So this is Cooke today. We actually have a few more people than we did when we started. We have a few more people than we had when this picture was taken a few years ago. We built a brand new factory in 2000, right after I bought the company, and we're still located in Leicester, just about a mile from where we had been for the 20 years, and then about 3 miles from Taylor Hobson was making lenses in downtown Leicester. So today we're about 130, 140 people worldwide. We have offices mainly in Leicester, but here in New Jersey, California now, Sao Paulo, and recently opened an office in Shanghai. So with that, I think I turn it back to Eric, and take it, Eric.
Thanks, Les. I don't know if my audio is any better or not. If it's not, you may want to just keep going with this.
I'll do this one. I did want to do this one.
Okay.
And then I'll turn it over to you, Eric, and or whoever. Anyway, design philosophy. This is really important, and this sort of goes to the heart of Cooke lenses and how we design anything. At the heart of all of our design philosophy is the Cooke look. Cooke look evolved from the Speed Panchros. I won't tell you what it is, but if you use Cooke lenses, you'll know it when you see it. It's warm, it's flattering, it's not overly contrasty. Some people, there is confusion between contrast and resolution. By giving up some contrast, we really don't give up resolution, but we do gain detail, especially in the shadows, something that we're known for. So our lenses have been consistent since the Speed Panchros. So if you like the Cooke look, you can get them in all the flavors that we were just talking about. And DPs, it's pretty, I don't mean to talk bad of DPs, but they're really pretty easy to please. If they like the Cooke look and the personality of Cooke, that's what we want from them. The assistants, when we designed the S4s, the assistants actually had the biggest input. Because they're the people that have to pick up the lens, they have to focus the lens, they have to, they're the ones that have to deal with the actual lens. And we spent a lot of time talking to DPs, DPs too, but a lot of time talking to assistants. And the assistants are really the ones that are responsible for our ergonomic design. We won an academy, the design of the S4s won an award for the mechanical and optical design. We brought cam focusing to prime lenses. And that allowed us, if you've worked with any old lens, any of the older lenses, or even some of the newer ones that use a multi-thread focus, at the close focus, the numbers are very far apart. And at the long end, the numbers get really bunched up really quickly. By using a cam, they were able to move the numbers closer together at close focus and spread them out at long focuses, so you'd get a lot more marks and easier and not crowded. They wanted the linear iris. We provided them with linear iris. We provided them with the gears at the same place, the iris and focus and zoom gears at the same place on every lens. These are things that made their life easier when they were changing a lens. They didn't have to move the motors around or the polyfocuses around. We pretty well know we nailed the ergonomic design, because virtually pretty much all of our competitors have one way or another copied it. So I guess I should be flattered, but I'm not. And then lastly, you want to go back one, Eric? Back. And then the owners. All of the manufacturers, especially in the pre-digital world, sold mainly to rental houses, with others, yes, to production companies and independent owners, but primarily rental houses. And their concern, as is even if you're an individual, was how good the lens is, not only optically, but how it's maintained. We spent a lot of time doing the mechanical design of the S4s and all of its subsequent lenses to make them as maintainable and serviceable as possible and quickly as possible by local, either rental house or local technicians. And now, Eric, is this where you want to take over?
If you don't mind, Les, you want to just keep going? I think I'm going to have audio issues.
Okay, well, that was the best audio you've had tonight, but I can keep going.
Okay.
Is that a yes? Okay, then we went back to me.
I think your sound is fine, Eric, from where I'm hearing.
Yeah, the last time you were on was okay.
Okay.
Why don't you give it a go and see how long you can before you.
Okay, no problem. So I think Les pretty much covered most of that, just as a general overview, a high level overview of the Cooke lenses. You know, we do Super 35, full frame lenses, anamorphic primes and zooms. They're all color matched. Les spoke about the award-winning linear cam focus system. The minimum object distance is no more than 10 times the focal length or better, which what that means is that most of these lenses have a very nice close focus capability to them. It's one of the design characteristics that a Cooke lens has. All of the modern lenses now also integrate the eye technology, which all the major camera manufacturers have adopted, and a lot of the lens manufacturers have adopted as well. It is becoming the standard across the industry for metadata capture. And of course, there is the undisputable Cooke look. That's really why people choose our lenses, is for that look. And what is the Cooke look? You know, Les touched upon this earlier, and we've had a lot of slides over the years of very high-level DPs trying to explain what the Cooke look is. And, you know, Jan's quote here is pretty good and to the point. But when I think about the Cooke look, what really draws me in is the actual work of the directors of photography. So this is a scene from Birds of Prey, lensed by Matthew Lebatique, shot on the Cooke 2x anamorphic SF set. And when I look at this, I go, that is the Cooke look. You have a number of things a number of qualities that are inherent within this image, and that subtle fall off from center to edge, which really just is a beautiful cinematic image. Here's another still photography or still shot from a major motion picture film. This is Stars Born. What you have here is the back of two people's heads, which is not normally the most engaging image that you've had. But again, this is a very beautiful image for a number of reasons, and that being because of the Cooke look. And one of the things, if you look in the upper left-hand corner of this image, you see that oval bokeh. And that is often a dead giveaway that this was shot in anamorphic. When you start to see oval bokeh and not round, it generally means that these were originated with an anamorphic lens. And then last but not least, same lenses, Cooke anamorphic 2x SF, but here they are on the set of Star Trek. So three very different looks, all from the same set of lenses, but they all maintain what we refer to as the Cooke look. So again, when it comes time to tell your story, you can use this equipment in any way that you see fit, so you're able to tell your best story. Now getting into where we are today in 2020, the Cooke lens family. And we went through this a little bit before with all of those, and we ended at the S7s, which was the introduction of the full frame lenses in 2017. The latest trick from Cooke, we talked about the S4s before, the mini S4s, the 5-eyes, which is our speed lenses. The anamorphic primes, these are the traditional 2x anamorphics, and these come in two flavors. You have regular and SF, which is referred to as special flare, but since Les is here, I will say it actually stands for super funky. But we couldn't put super funky on the list, so I think Robert Howard was the one that made this become the special flare. But for those that know, SF is really stands for super funky. And you can get these in either flavor these days. However, markets like the Americas, Canada, the United States, Latin America, they have really gone full force on the SF. Any sort of characteristics that the anamorphic lens can lend to the project is often welcomed. I mean, when I'm on sets with these guys, recently Star Trek comes to mind. They said, if you guys had a set that was super special flare, we would go from that. And you can see that because they're using streak filters and all sorts of tricks on top of these lenses. I mean, the last thing that they're going for is a rectilinear spherical look. And we spoke about the Panchro Classics, which was the reimagining of the vintage lenses in the S7 primes, which were introduced at the same time in 2017. And that brings us to the new lenses, which are the full frame plus lenses. These are a completely new optical design, but if you think about them being similar to the S7s in the rear and the 2.0 anamorphics in the front, you'll have an idea of the optical design. They're a full frame lens that is anamorphic doing the squeeze. And it just opens up a lot more creative possibilities of what you can do. You know, I remember when we first introduced these lenses, I forget what trade show it was. I think it was IBC. And, I think it was Les came up to me and he says, why did I hire you? You don't even know how to put the lens on the camera. That's because one of the guys that was there, very high level director of photography, does all the fashion stuff for all the great big windows, for Prada and Gucci and all these guys. And he turns these monitors 90 degrees. So he does vertical video, which is somewhat foreign to us in the cinematography world. Vertical video, that's what people shoot on their cell phones. That's not what we do. It's becoming what we do, a part of what we do. And this gentleman is using full frame anamorphic vertical video to help his work stand out from the crowds when they hang these monitors in the fashion windows. It is a very interesting way of doing things, not something I don't think Cooke had really envisioned when the lens was designed, but it's just another way for that individual to tell his story, and it worked very well.
Eric, you still there?
Eric, you're muted.
Eric, you disappeared.
Oh, hello? How's this?
You hit your mute button.
Okay, I should be unmuted now.
A lot of errors in the program, it seems.
Okay, are you talking?
No. I should be unmuted, which brings us to this slide, why shoot anamorphic? There was a lot of content shot spherical over the years, a lot of shot anamorphic. But what you're seeing here is you're seeing a spherical lens and an anamorphic lens capturing the same shot. And I forget who it was, but somebody in our company said, if you don't see the difference here, you're probably in the wrong business.
That was me.
Okay, so that was our fearless leader Les that said that, and I really do agree with that statement. There's nothing wrong with either one of these images, but to me, the anamorphic image is a much more cinematic image. And there are people I'm sure that'll disagree with me, but that is really the nature of art. And it's what Les spoke about earlier, why people do want to shoot anamorphic and all the character that it does lend to the project. And with that, there's just a quick technical explanation on full frame anamorphic, our full frame anamorphic, and what it is and what it does. For those of you that don't know, anamorphic is essentially folding an image in half and then de-squeezing it. And that de-squeeze is what creates all of the beautiful artifacts and lovely imagery that goes along with that. So here's an overlay of super 35 millimeter film over full frame 35 millimeter film. The super 35 was a 4:3 image area, where the full frame is 3:2. So you're starting with a little different aspect ratio from the get-go when you are doing full frame anamorphic. And that is the reason why, part of the reason why the 1.8 squeeze came into play. You'll see here the 36:24 full frame 3:2, when it is fully de-squeezed, yields a 271, which is a very, very large image, almost to the point of IMAX or something like that. Of course, that can be cropped out to 241 or anything else in between. And interestingly enough, a lot of our customers, we thought most of it would be cropped to 241, but a lot of people are actually keeping the 271 and showing their final project in that aspect ratio.
I would note, Eric, that the 2.7 is just a hair under Ultra Panavision 276.
Okay. And as you can see, that the reason for the 1.8 is when you go ahead and you de-squeeze these, this is what the image should look like. 1.6 was a cleaner looking de-squeeze. There's many different de-squeeze. You do 1.3, 1.6, 1.8. Cooke does 2.0 and now 1.8 on these full frame anamorphics. 1.6 was a little bit too clean, and then 2.0, the de-squeeze being somewhat destructive, did destroy about, what was it, 15 to 20% of the resolution for the pixels, which with all the streaming content these days and all the rules that those individuals want to write, that just was a big headache that wasn't needed. So at the end of the day, the designers came up with the 1.8, and it really was the winner. Everybody that looked at it said that's the lens. This is the lens to make. And when I pulled this out of the box for the first time at the trade show and put this up with no lighting, anything else, I looked through it and was amazed. I said, wow, that really is cinematic right out of the box. And these have just become, along with the S7s, an incredibly popular choice for this new full frame cinematography trend that is upon us all right now. This is our filmed with Cooke. This is just a very small sampling. You can imagine after 130 years, everything that has been done. But this, we start with the silent movie era and we go all the way into the era of the biggest motion picture feature film blockbusters that are in the theaters today and everything in between. One of the most interesting things, I don't know if it was touched upon, is the upper right-hand corner of this. You'll see that the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences was kind enough to award Cooke with an Oscar not too many years ago for our achievement in the field of motion picture and television sciences. And that being said, this is the gentleman that you all just listened to on the cover of Film and Digital Times. We often forget the history, these little pieces of history. I found many years ago, I wrote a white paper on rod standards, 15 millimeter lightweight, 19 millimeter studio, and the rest. And just researching all of that, it was amazing to me. There were a few old guys, I'm thinking Denny Claremont, rest his soul, Otto Nemens in Hollywood, that helped me with that because they were the ones that really created those rod standards. Well, we often forget when our mentor, John Fowler, did the first tour for Film and Digital Times, that was the Cooke factory. Well, we're back. The factory has been redone. It was just expanded. And there's a lovely article online and also in last month's Film and Digital Times of our chairman, Les Ellen, going through that. And it's just really great to see how this has had, the impact this has had over the last 20 years in this industry. And with that being said, we've been innovating since 1893. You can go to our website. And then also we have two other very interesting websites that have become immensely popular. Cooke Optics TV and Shot on Cooke. Cooke Optics TV is about the art and craft of cinematography. It's not a commercial for what we do. It's a commercial for the industry. Shot on Cooke, that's a little bit different. That is a commercial for what we do. So depending on what you're looking for, there's a vast amount of information available on these three sites. And anybody from Cooke, I'm sure, would love to help you. If you want to just reach out and talk to us, we are there for you guys. If it wasn't for our customers, we wouldn't be here. So we really, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you all so much. And we're excited to come to work every day to see what we do on the big screen or the little screen or our iPhones or wherever we're watching content these days. It makes us all very proud, and we're proud that you guys are part of this with us. And that being said, that is it for my PowerPoint presentation.
Let's see your lovely face then.
So if I can figure out how to turn this off.
Okay. Now going, I guess who's next? Michael? Michael, you need to unmute your mic.
You hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you now.
Okay, my name is Michael Nadas. I started with Cooke back in November of last year. I was hired to cover the West Coast, mainly the Hollywood area, although I work very closely with Christine Brennick and Ricardo Monti in New Jersey daily. Daniel in South America, we all work very closely together mainly for the service part of things. The good thing for me here, living in LA, is that I can be at almost any rental house in Los Angeles, pretty much within an hour and a half if you're going to Culver City, which is probably the worst drive in LA. It's face to face that I believe was lacking for Cooke over the years in Los Angeles in the market here. So I'm very happy to be able to do that here. Anybody can reach out to me, contact me, parts, service, sales, any question you have. The one thing I want to mention too about the Los Angeles market right now is that I'm very happy to say that it's slowly coming back. I'm in contact with a lot of rental houses, and it seems to be that around June, beginning of June, we might have companies back up and running, with lesser people, most likely in the beginning, and ramping back up to full speed. I've spoken to some, friends up in Canada, and there seem to be July and August. So they're a little more hesitant on coming back, and it could be the insurance industry for production, getting production back up and running, and then the rental houses are going to open up. It's a big, big question, and we'll see how it goes. I wanted to say, I had a lot of slides to show of parts and things, and it might have been a little too dry for everybody. So again, reach out to me for anything you have any interest in, any service questions. I want to mention I was last at the factory in January with Daniel, and we had an excellent 2-week visit there and far more in-depth training. The factory had just opened up in the new clean standard, which literally blew me away, and it was very impressive. The HEPA filtered air in essentially the entire workroom where everything is assembled is very, very impressive. You start by wearing the booties, you put the hairnet on. If you have even the slightest amount of a beard, you put on a face net, and then you put the overalls on, and then you can enter the assembly room. And that includes the production room as well. So very, very impressive. I was really blessed and honored to have John Fowler there the exact same time I was there. So if you go to the last issue of Film and Digital Times about a month ago, you'll see the whole story on the Cooke factory. And I mean, I had slides of the polishing of all the optics, the edge blacking, coating, everything, but it was really well covered in that issue. So I really encourage everybody to go on there and have a look. We're looking.
Question earlier, Michael, regarding lens cleaning.
Yes, and I was just going to get on that. So the first question came about, I don't know, about 2 months ago. What do you do for cleaning lenses and to protect yourself from the virus? And so I came up with what my research had always revealed, that you need to have a 70% isopropyl alcohol content in your cleaning solution. If you use 99%, it evaporates much too quickly. So the 70% with essentially 30% water in your solution allows it to linger just a little longer before evaporating. And the whole theory is that it has more time to kill the virus. Now, we're not talking by any means to soak any lens, okay? We're talking about spraying the solution into a wiping cloth. And one of the cloths I brought back from the factory worked amazingly. It is a 100% polyester cloth made in Korea. And I have the document that I've created. It should be on the Cooke website, hopefully by next week. It covers the whole entire company, from the UK to the US and around the world. Now, again, shoot me any questions you have on this. We looked into UV lights as well, and there's so many safety protocols involved when using UV lights to disinfect things. And it's, you know, I can't tell you how effective it really is because there's so many devices available on the market right now, from really, really hokey little things to disinfect your phone to industry, how do I say, industry level disinfecting machines. And they are out there and they're really expensive. But again, a lens is circular. How are you going to disinfect the whole diameter of the lens and then tell me that, yes, the virus is killed on that lens? We can't guarantee that. So if people want to do that as a backup measure, by all means, you can do that. We do not recommend pointing any UV light down the barrel of the lens. Do not point it at the optics. We're talking about the exterior mechanical housing. That should be safe, no problem. But again, we first and foremost, I recommend the 70% isopropyl alcohol. Wipe the lens down, don't soak it, and you'll see that evaporates within seconds, you know, depending how much you put on your cloth. Those wiper cloths that I mentioned from Korea, they're fabulous. I mean, one cloth it's a 9x9 size. There's no lint. The first time you use it, you can actually, it's safe to use on glass. So the factory uses them on the larger optics, and it really, really impressed me. So again, shoot me a message and I can give you all the details on that product. If you can get it from Korea, excellent. I highly recommend it.
Michael, so you know, what we're doing, and I think a lot of the rental houses are doing, instead of disinfecting stuff, we're putting stuff in quarantine for a time frame. And now the CDC says that a day is fine to leave the stuff in the case. So we're leaving it in the case for 2 days if we can, unless we have a turnaround.
Yep.
And then also we're telling our clients not to disinfect anything. We'll take care of it. So it's, you know, you know, we have our own procedures.
Yep.
Don't disinfect the glass. There's no need to touch the glass. That's what we're saying.
I was just going to get on that.
Yeah.
So
unless it's actually dirty.
So Carrie and I in the company, we were discussing this. Okay, so somebody sneezes near a lens on set, and everybody has just this big concern. Oh my God, what if the droplets got on the front element? Well, chances are, if you're not shooting, the lens is capped, so that risk there is very minimal. And the same as when the lens is on your bench or at any rental house, the lens is going to be capped. So my original thought was that risk there is virtually non-existent. But we came up with you know, we try to think of everything: on-set use, in rental house use, sitting in a box, whatever. We thought, okay, most lens technicians are going to use acetone to clean the optics. So I can't tell you or verify that acetone is going to kill the virus, but we do know 70% alcohol does. So Carrie and I thought, okay, here's what we can do. So there's optical cleaners out there from, you know, there's so many different brands out there.
Michael,
yes.
you should explain who Carrie is.
Oh, Carrie Duffy is our head sales for all of Europe. If you ever, I've been listening to his Zoom meetings online. They've been fabulous. He interviews all the DPs. T for two, yep. You can go back and you can listen to the older ones that have already been recorded. It's very entertaining. He's amazing to talk to. So going back, we thought a lot of these commercial optical cleaners have an alcohol content in them. So an AC is typically not going to carry acetone on set, and it's not going to use acetone to clean an optic. So, but what they would use would be a Pancro type product. So that typically has alcohol in it. So if somebody sneezes near a lens on set, yeah, the AC can clean it with one of those commercial products, and that should, you know, in theory, it should kill the virus. But again, we can't guarantee it. And as we've said in our document, there's no guarantees. What we're saying, it's our recommendation. It's what we do at the factory. It's what I do as on service, what we all do on service. So, you know, we don't take any responsibility for, and we can't prove anyway that the virus is killed. But we do know, as you mentioned, that we know the virus, what they say anyway, that sitting for a day or two, the virus should be dead on any type of aluminum surface, any box, We do spray down boxes when they come in the door. Again, it's extra precaution. So again, the 70% alcohol solution sprayed in a big, you can make your own, make it in a spray bottle. If you have 99%, add 30% water. Try and measure as close as you can. Spray down your boxes, spray down your road cases, if you have time and if you want to take that measure. Or as you said, just let it sit for a day or two if you have that if you're able to do that. I'm looking at online training. Guy did a fabulous job of in-person training at the factory for many years. I'm looking right now at doing an online forum. I will let you guys know, hopefully by the end of the month, if we can get that up and running. And who would be interested? I think that would be fabulous. So stay tuned for that. We're working on that. Again, I had slides on lens parts, on what makes the Cooke lenses so special and what makes them so serviceable. Come at me with any questions you want, email, pictures, and I will get back to you on that. I thought it might be a little bit too dry to put that on today's discussion here. So I think that's about it at the moment. Shoot me any questions you have, and I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Michael. So who is up next here?
Yes, that would be Thomas.
Thomas or Daniel, whoever it is.
Mhm.
Well, that's okay. Yeah, no, I can start. As Les said so nicely in the beginning, I really shouldn't be here, given that my territory is mostly Asia and the Middle East and Africa, and it is right now almost 3 o'clock in the morning in Beijing, so I doubt many people are going to listen into it. But I'm going to give you my spiel a little bit about the market trends in Asia. And they're not really much different than it is in the US or in Europe. And I have worked for the last 12 years for Cooke, and I've covered the US in the beginning and then intermediate for Europe and now covering the rest of the world. But what makes it different in Asia than the rest of the world, they embrace new technology very fast. Well, let's put it this way, faster. When we introduced, just as an example, the S7 line of product, the full frame lenses, we thought the market presence might be around 25% compared to Super 35 over the next 4 or 5 years. Having said that, especially in China, it changed within months. And the forecast from customers down there, the shooting ratio is about 75% shooting full frame. And 35 millimeter is really taking the back burner like 16 millimeter did when Super 35 came around, or even HD for that market. When it comes to challenges and opportunities, they're really not much different than they are in the US. Having said that, there is, with the whole virus situation, obviously there is a damper in every market, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I'm pretty sure it's not a freight train you're seeing coming up. And as Michael said, even in the US, slowly business is starting to open back up. And in China, I would think it's around all over Asia, China, South Korea, even Japan. We are probably around 75% there. Local production starting shooting. Feature films, not as much because of all the pre-work, and they were put on hold. So that's scheduled for probably Q4 this year. But there's, like I said, light end of the tunnel. The production are shooting, rental companies opening up, always all the local safety recommendations and kept in mind, and cleaning of the gear. But in all, the challenges are the same worldwide. We travel around everywhere and we meet all our customers on trade shows worldwide, NIB, IBC, whatever you go to. And one thing is always the same. We talk to rental houses and they always feel certain situations are very unique to just them. But then you talk to every other customer and they face exactly the same challenges. Maybe a little bit delayed, not everywhere at the same time. We always have one of our Cooke events at NIB, which is, it's a dinner and we get together with rental houses, with cinematographer, customers, and just to exchange. And you find out when you talk to other rental houses or other manufacturers, they all face the same issues. So that's really not very localized. Again, every country has their own little challenges when it comes to local requirements. Like India, for example, I don't know how many people know the Indian market. 20 years ago, that was all just anamorphic lenses. There was really virtually no Super 35 format in existence. Everything was shot in anamorphic lenses, old anamorphic lenses. And I think Cooke played a big part of changing that. We used to have employed with Cooke, Jeffrey Chappell, if you remember him. And he almost certainly was a big part of changing the market into Super 35. And it's a very unique market. There's everything right now is just shot in Super 35. Anamorphic throughput is very, very little in India. But even that is slowly changing with the full frame format. We have lots of requirements, especially with Netflix shooting big, long productions in India. And their requirements are full frame and anamorphic. So we have delivered, I don't know how many, but several sets of full frame anamorphics into India. So every market is a little bit different, but in the whole scheme of things, they're not. They have the same challenges and the same opportunities. And with that, I think I give over to Daniel because he has some reports or some market trends on the Brazilian market.
Yeah, Brazilian market is pretty similar to what you just described. I think after Netflix and after the Alexa LF, people started asking for full frame lenses. Like Les said, our S7s were released in 2017, but people actually started to ask for when the LF was released. That is not a coincidence. And that's how the market is right now. People are asking for, we don't have many sets here. We don't have many anamorphic full frame lenses here, but people are interested on it.
Okay, is that it, Daniel?
Yep.
Okay. Well, we've spieled now for about an hour and 40 minutes. We'd love to take any questions you guys might have or on any specific issue except political.
Oh, could I have a question? Could I ask a question?
Why not?
Yeah, so do you know about the Red Komodo using eye technology, and how would that work with the RF lens going into, because I do virtual production basically. We already have a set of S4 lenses that we rent out for a company. We have a company called Spinning Mirror, so we use the eye technology with the Reds and the Arries connected to virtual production. So when the RF, is there any lens that any technology? Because I already know that there was a Sigma one last week, a Sigma meeting like this last week, and they were trying to get the L mount to PL mount for the eye technology, basically.
Okay, well, you said the Red's using an L mount?
No, Red already have the Black Magic, Ursa's,
right.
the DCM1, DCM2. They all have the eye technology built in to the lens mount. So when you put the camera on, it gets recorded through the metadata. But Sigma, there was a last meeting, and Sigma had a problem with the eye mount going through to the PL mount. I'm not saying that this was advertised that it was going to work, and it did. I think they, in the end, they changed it halfway through. But I'm just wondering if, like, the same thing with the Red Komodo's got the RF mount to PL mount there. But is there any brand that actually is making this?
Well, our standard is revolving around the PL mount, and now around the LPL mount.
Yeah.
It's up to other manufacturers if they're going to introduce another mount to translate or get things all the way through to their pins. The eye, we developed the eye over the last 18, 19 years. And as I said earlier, we've really given it away to pretty much the whole industry, although not everybody is using it, but just about the whole industry is licensed for it. To what degree they use it is up to them. And, you know, we can't, at the end of the day, eye is simply a language so that lenses can talk to cameras and talk to other pieces of equipment, and everybody gets the same answer. And the way other companies implement eye is out of our control. In theory, all this gear that they come out with is supposed to come to Cooke for compatibility testing. In reality, it's pretty rare.
So Jared or anybody from Red hasn't come to you to try to sort out this problem? Because
no, we'd love to help them. In fact, I was at Red just before the quarantines came down.
Yeah.
Talking to their crew there. We are open and ready to help our technical guys, of which I am not one, but our engineers that work on eye we have made available to any company that's having any issues implementing the system and trying to work with them. Red has some particular legacy issues due to the bandwidth that they have available at the front of the camera.
Does it
really I'm not in any position to answer your question, but are we happy to work with Red as we're happy to work with anybody, competitor or camera manufacturer that's working to implement the eye standard?
Yeah, I could give you a heads up that this is going to be super imperative in the next coming months.
I don't doubt it. We're working with some other companies.
Up for this.
Yeah, we are working with some other companies on virtual production. One of the things about the eye, there's some flavors of eye. i3, which is the latest flavor, includes distortion and shading information. And the way we produce distortion is pixel accurate. We measure every lens.
Is that available in the SF Anamorphic?
It will be. It is not. Doing it in spherical lenses was really, really hard. Doing it in anamorphics is like, put that, it's really, really hard on steroids. I mean, it's incredibly complex mathematics. We've done those now. We've done the mathematics, and we are at the point of getting ready to, what we're at the point of now is productionizing the process so that later this, probably early fall, maybe late summer, the anamorphic lenses we deliver will include that information. It's incredibly
complex. Can you update the old lenses?
I'm sorry?
Can you update the old lenses to the eye?
In theory, we can update any older lens to the new standard. Lenses that we've made probably in the last 2 or 3 years, maybe even longer ago than that, in fact, have the new board in them. It's just that they were made before we had the ability to calibrate them. So they can be, unfortunately at the moment, the only place they can do the calibration is the factory. And we're working on that to spread that around the world as well.
Yeah, I'm in England, so it's all good.
Oh, that's easy for you.
Yeah.
Just drive up the M1 and stop in. Well, don't really do that. Call first.
I know all the guys up there.
Yeah, but but yes, older lenses, now the really much older S4 lenses that were made, I think, between 98 and 2006, or so when we introduced those don't have any electronics in them, and those are not upgradable. They didn't. If you see an original S4, the iris ring is flat and on the axis of where all the new Cooke lenses, the iris ring is on like a 45-degree angle to the housing. And the reason it's there is that cavity that we create is where the computer board lives, those little circular computer and electronics that read the lenses. So lenses that don't have the iris on an angle can't update. Anything that's newer than that, we can update, whether we have to replace the board or just calibrate it, will depend on, it'll depend on the age of the lens.
Yeah, so all the...
Also, I should mention newer lenses. For about the last, 6 months, a year, there was an issue. There was an issue with ARRI on using their focus and their motors and control systems, which are very popular, that they could read the Cooke lenses, but they couldn't display the information correctly on the screens as if you were using an ARRI or a Zeiss lens. And the reason is that they measured angle different than we did. We measured, we just had a different measurement system. In more current lenses, I would say for probably the last year, we now include both ways of measuring. So if you use ARRI focusing and control equipment, you should get the same kind of display working. If you had the latest firmware from the ARRI guys, and maybe, I think I saw some ARRI people on here earlier, maybe they have an answer for that. Eye is continuing to evolve. It is now, as has been said, we've got a lot of manufacturers involved, and it continues to grow, and trying to keep track of it is like sort of herding cats. But we continue to work on that just about daily.
Yeah, I do like what you were saying before about the focus on the older DCM1 red cameras. I had a problem with, like, when you turn it on, you see the mark, and a few turns here and there you'd see it and then it would disappear. But on all the DCM2s, they work fine. Also, the shading detail as well really works in handy when you're doing CGI.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think a lot of people don't really know how handy it is. It's the difference. You could spend like 10 hours doing a model of a dustbin that looks really good, and then do it without this technology, and it looked pretty decent. But then when you put this on, and you could have like a crappy looking dustbin that doesn't look very real in CG. When you add all these elements, it starts looking a lot more realistic than something that you spent ages doing it. So my plan is to try to kind of show that in my YouTube videos how effective that is, really.
Great.
Yeah.
And I want people to know we didn't pay you to come on this call.
No, definitely not. No, I'm just doing my own thing. Yeah.
One of the things I should mention is the way we do calibration on our lenses, especially the distortion, is if you've done this, you should, you go into a rental house or a studio and you shoot charts for a day or 2 days.
That's a whole day of work, maybe 2.
We do that. We basically do that, and we do that with every lens. So we're not using a general formula for a 50mm lens. The distortion characteristics that are available for that lens are that lens.
Yeah.
So that's really important.
Yeah,
it's extremely accurate and can really save a lot of time.
You said about the anamorphics. They will have them on there soon with the...
The anamorphics will be the same way. I mean, we're going to map every lens individually before it leaves the factory.
The anamorphics is a real, like, I've tried to do like old school lenses, and when you're trying to profile the lenses, sometimes, you know, we spent like 3 days trying to do it for a production. I won't name which one because it's quite big, but, you know, we spent a lot of days trying to work out the actual distortion versus to try and get it to match. And like you see with, especially with anamorphics, you get more of a, like where you get the curvature, like literally when you get it right, the scene kind of bends round the actual characters, and some of the foreground and background kind of slide in underneath them into the right place. And without that, it just be, you know, it just be a mess.
Right.
Like,
When you're ready to do your YouTube videos, you should definitely get in touch with Kathleen Crawley, our director of marketing.
Yeah.
That's something we may be very interested in cross promoting at that time. I know there are a lot of questions on this. So do we have another question from the audience? Don't want to take up too much time on this. We could talk about eye technology for hours.
Yeah, yeah.
I was wondering, how many lenses do you plan to have in your full frame anamorphics in the set?
It'll be pretty similar to the, I mean, if I told you that I'd have to kill you, but it'll be pretty similar to the Super 35 set. You know, it will go out to 300. And we just introduced in the full frame anamorphics the 85 millimeter macro. We introduced that at BSC, which is pretty much the equivalent of the 65 millimeter macro that we have in the Super 35 anamorphic set. So it'll be very similar. And then you should know the 65 millimeter macro in the PCs, the Panpro Classics, the two anamorphic macros, the 65 and the 85 in anamorphic are all about 4:1 macros. We did just introduce 3 1:1 macros, a 60, a 90, and a 150. These lenses are all, like all of our lenses, these are from the ground up lenses. They are not rehoused anything. They're designed by the same team that has done all of our lenses. Well, team's different, it's changed over time, but it's the same group of people, the Cooke design staff, that have done both the optics and the mechanics on everything we do. So these are real motion picture lenses that are up to the rigors of the industry.
We have another question from Eric Edwards. Is asking, full frame anamorphic zoom, is that down the road? That's sort of a daunting task, I'm sure.
Let's just say that that we will probably cover full frame the same way we cover Super 35.
And then what do you think is after full frame?
God, I hope nothing.
I bet.
I have to say, I was never a fan of full frame when it came out. Personally, I was not a fan of full frame. I think, you know, why do we need full frame so I can watch a movie on my phone here, you know? But talking to a lot of DPs, they really like the 3x2 format. It gives them a whole different way of storytelling as opposed to just more information. So wearing my Cooke hat, I love full frame. You know, it just sells tons of lenses, tons of more lenses. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. So, you know, what's next? I know talking to Mr. Fowler that, you know, they're talking, you know, medium format. God help us, you know, my time at Cooke will be done before that happens, I'm sure. So doing this transition has been exciting and difficult, and but you know, to what end do we need bigger formats? I guess that's the question. When the depth is already in full frame, in spherical full frame at say T14, The depth of field is already a hair. You know, what more do you want? Can anybody actually pull focus at that? Not really. We have a customer in South America that just shooting in standard Super 35 single chip cinematography style, and they, you know, a lot of their directors is a TV station, and a lot of their directors like to use, you know, things wide open. So I was sitting with the chief engineer, and he said, "Well, what do you think of our stuff?" And I said, "Well, I think it looks like shit. Is people are weaving in and out of focus all the time. You know, to me, that's not a sign of, you know, what you're doing. That's a sign that that doesn't look good to me." Of course, maybe they like that look. He said, "What would you do to fix it?" I said, "I'd put a screw in the iris so it couldn't go faster than a 2 or a 2.8. They ignored my advice, however, and but you know, these infinitesimally small depths of field are interesting. But it's sort of like, you know, it's sort of like Star Trek, the one that that was done a few years ago, where it was all streaking all the time. At some point, all these things are good if they're used at the right time to get the right reaction. If they're used all the time, it sort of loses its power.
That's what we see right now a lot with all the different trends with lenses, whether, you know, it's vintage lenses or new lenses or lenses with character. And so now it's just sort of a big, huge melting pot of imagery.
Boy, is it ever.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And so, you know, people said, oh, those people aren't going to want flares anymore. People aren't going to want, you know, this or that. But then it all circles back. It's like long lens trends and wide lens trends.
You know, when the Cooke lenses first came out, the S4s in '98, if you actually go back and look at our ads or what people were saying about them, they were saying, gee, great, you know, they're not flaring, I can shoot. The Cooke lenses were probably the first lenses designed wide open, as opposed to be designed to stop what you down and then just open it until people said, oh my God, I can't look at that anymore. So people were saying, I can confidently shoot wide open at T2, blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden, you know, as soon as people lose something, they want it. So almost immediately where people were saying, oh, God, I really miss those flares. I miss, you know, so I remember when ARRI discontinued their quite complex mechanical macros that they had that were quite nice, I mean, really nice lenses, but the complexity of the mechanics was a nightmare. And as soon as they got discontinued, because they weren't selling, all of a sudden there's this groundswell of people saying, oh my God, we need macros, you know? So you always want what you don't have. So, but now it's interesting, you know, when in the film world, it was, as I said earlier, it was just us and Zeiss and Ingenue, and now it's us, Zeiss and Ingenue, and so several of the big guys like Fuji and Canon, but also a lot of people startup, because the market has grown exponentially. The market for glass has just grown exponentially as digital has come in, and the amount of content is has grown along with it.
Gaston, it looks like you have a question for us.
Yes, hi from Miami.
Hey, how are you?
Doing fine. I just have a quick question for Les. As a lens designer, is the LPL advantageous to work with when you're designing a lens, or is more like a company strategy than a technical improvement?
The answer to that is, in theory, having a larger rear allows you to get a bigger optic out the back. You know, the reality is we have continued to, all of our lenses, with the exception at the Mini at the moment, we do have now an LPL mount, which does bring the electronics through, so the eye system comes through. We can take off the PL mount, throw on the LPL, go on an LPL. It is still a T2. If it was a T2 lens in PL, it's still a T2 lens in LPL. Until, when the PL was introduced, wow, in the mid 80s, I guess. Before that, everybody was using the area bayonet mount, and it was a big improvement. And for the same reason, they wanted to get more light through the mount. It was a big improvement, but back then, ARRI owned the industry. It was either ARRI or it was Canon. So it was very quick for the industry to switch over from bayonet to PL. Like it or not, ARRI doesn't own the industry anymore. There are lots of competitors. PL, I think, still rules the roost. So, if you design a lens specifically around LPL, you're currently stuck. And well, not stuck. You've got a lot of good ARRI cameras that can work on, but you're limited. So we continue to, for the foreseeable future, we still design around the PL, but they're all LPL compatible.
Okay. Yeah,
Without
I remember.
Adapter, I mean, a hard mount, not an adapter.
I remember hearing something about like the LPL having a shorter flange, being closer to the sensor. You have more, more light. That's a plus. But the con would be that being closer, the beam to spread to the corner, having a shorter space, it makes more difficult to have,
Yes, yes.
So, and somebody said that the PL was like a sweet spot. It's not like LPL is not like an improvement over PL 4-foot frame lens.
Ultimately, having a bigger hole to go through is going to help. It makes the lens more flexible and easier to design, but it doesn't make the lens, if you have a good designer, it doesn't make the lenses better or worse. So, as far as we are, because we make lenses for the whole industry, not just, a couple ARRI cameras, the industry is still predominantly PL.
Thank you.
Sure.
There's a question here from Daniel Santi. In the future, does Cooke have any plans of releasing lenses with a smaller housing?
That's another one of those questions that if I answered it, I have to kill you. So, I know we're not known for making the smallest, lightest lenses. And I know there are obviously applications where smaller and lighter would be better. So we're always thinking about what we can do next and what tools we can provide the industry. But again, we're still a small company, so we, even though we can move much faster now than we could 20 years ago, it's still, we've got a lot of stuff on our drawing board that will be coming out over the next year or two.
Any other questions?
Upside down, Eric. There you go. Okay.
If there's no other questions, does anybody want to talk about how things are going in their markets around the US and around the world as far as, is everybody sort of in the same holding pattern and a little bit of stuff is going on, or?
How's things in Portland, Michael? What can we send you?
Things are pretty good in Portland. We're sort of at 3/4 staff, and we have our procedures with signing in and social distancing and all of that stuff. We have maybe just like 3 cameras that go out a week and accessories. Not much going on, but some stuff going on, which is good. Our county isn't opened up yet, Multnomah County, where Portland is, but all the other counties in the state are basically at their first stage of opening up, if not their second phase of opening up. One concern that we have that I think maybe a lot of smaller markets have around the US anyway is, I feel that our film incentive is potentially threatened, which brings in a lot of work. So that's
You know, that's a
Something-
very interesting point in all of this. Everybody's been so concerned about reopening. I haven't had a conversation about film incentives for probably 3 or 4 months now. Yeah, that's a very good point, and I would hope that all of these incentives get picked up again, because as we know, that's really a driving force for a lot of these regions.
Absolutely.
I would just mention, by the way, the factory is our factory is up and running. We did close down for about 10 days to reorient things and rearrange things, but we are basically running at full staff at the factory. So we're making lenses. So when you're ready, Michael, we should be actually able to maybe even deliver for a change.
It seems like a lot of the rental houses are in a very similar experience to what you just described. There is independent work slowly coming through, but the big feature films and television and streaming service stuff is being held up due to the lack of any agreement between the studios and the crews, if you will. So if some sort of agreement can get worked out from that, it'll be interesting to see how things move forward, how quickly they move forward.
Well, I know in Canada, the Canadian government is sort of underwriting the insurance issue. And I think there's something bouncing around in the US government about doing the same thing. It'd be an interesting conversation to have an insurance expert on to talk about this hurdle and if it's going to be overcome or not. Because nothing's going to go without insurance, right?
That's the problem. Everybody with big productions is worried about opening up and, you know, God forbid anything happens and then the lawsuits start flying around.
Right.
It really is a hurdle to overcome right now, but we would hope that these issues will be overcome soon.
Well, thanks everybody for coming today to the Virtual Lens Summit. Next week, we have Tiffin with Oliver Bokelberg, ASC. He's shot Scandal and Station 19. And so that'll be pretty exciting, more of a filter-oriented event, something that everybody uses with their Cooke lenses or filters of different types, whether it's diffusion or ND or whatever, or polarizers. And then we're basically booked out on the Lens Summit through the end of August, if people line up. So there's some pretty exciting guests, and you can refer to our website, lensummit.com, for a schedule going out about 3 or 4 weeks. And then we'll be posting this event as well as previous events that we've done on our website, so you can watch the video if you'd like. Thanks a lot, Les, and your team for.
Pleasure, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah, super fun, and I hope it was educational.
I hope so too, although it seems like we lost about 20 people, but hopefully they got what they needed.
Oh yeah, I think it was fantastic.
Good.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, thanks.
Now if we can
This
just
is
have
great.
Darth
Thanks,
Vader come
everybody.
by on the unicycle.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a llama on here one of these times, and maybe the Unipiper.
It's just not a Lens Summit without Darth Vader on the unicycle.
Yeah, or a goat. You can pay for a goat to be on your Zoom, I guess.
Okay. Thanks again.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.